Hello friends, Tao the Tank here. Today we're going to be taking a look at my updated impressions and opinions about the Vengeance Demon Hunter here in the Legion Alpha. Now this is going to be the build current as of Tuesday, April 12th, 2016. So if by some awful God-given miracle they upload another build in the middle of the night and I'm screwed, well, oh well, too bad. I have to change this. But anyways, this is going to be taking a look, my second look again, at the Vengeance Demon Hunter. It is the tank that I've been personally very excited for and keeping a close eye on for a number of reasons. I want to go ahead and begin this video first, though, about talking a little bit about myself. So I mean, I'm not someone that's well known, and I want to go ahead and explain why I think I should be giving my opinion, why I think that my opinion has at least some method of validity to it. So I am a mythic tank here on the U.S. realm Thrall. My name is Talriel. I raid on my monk currently and my paladin, and I've been raiding with intent. We're 13 out of 13 mythic. We're going to be moving into Legion. We're doing mythic content. I will be doing even mythic dungeons and the challenge modes and all that kind of stuff. And I have one level of 100 of every single tank class. My intention is that I'm going to be doing basically class guides on all the tanks. I will be using them in raids. I will be playing them. I will be basically giving off all this information about them. And as such, I've been invited to the alpha here, and I'm going to be taking a look at all that as well. Now, I've already done a video for the initial artifact acquisition for each of the tanks. And when I first did the Vengeance one, as soon as it came out, I had a number of issues with the way that they played. They seemed unrefined. They didn't have their mechanics firmly locked down. I didn't like a lot of the playstyle to it, and I was concerned that maybe they were erring on the side of simplicity and powerfulness in sake of complexity and a real good mechanical depthness. That has changed for the most part. There's one or two things I'm still not crazy about that I really dislike, but that might be more of a playstyle issue, not so much a class issue. I think that at its core, there's a good idea here, and it's just going to be coming down to balancing and tuning and things like that that are going to happen. When the DKs first came out, they were overpowered. No one can argue that. They just were. When monks came out, it was really only Brewmaster that was overpowered. The issue here is if you come out with a new tank class and they're too weak, there's no reason to play them. But if they're too strong, or if you give them too many toys, they start trivializing a lot of mechanics. A very easy example of that is Brewmasters and the things that have been happening to them recently. Brewmasters no longer have Dizzying Haze, so they cannot kite forever and ever and ever. Brewmasters no longer have Guard, so they cannot just absorb random mechanics and shrug it off with their shuffle. It's been Stagger has changed a little bit. It's been nerfed quite a bit. Purifying Brew has been nerfed. They've been slowly taking away the toys that admittedly have made Brewmasters a little OP, especially in the current game, especially Blackrock Foundry for the most part. So it's something to keep in mind when we're evaluating this new tank. It's things, I know I'm talking about other classes right now, but it is important to keep in mind these things, these problems that could come up with a new class, because if you give them a lot of very special toys, then all of a sudden it's required to play this, and no one likes that situation. People want to play what they want to play, not what they have to play. There's a couple of things like that that we'll be getting into in this video. But for the most part, the initial iteration of the Vengeance Demon Hunter was very simple. You had a spammable attack that would give you a little bit of pain, and then you'd use that pain on something called Fellblade. Oh, Soul Cleave, I want to say. Or I think it was called Fellblade, but they changed it. But anyway, Soul Cleave basically does damage. It brings in soul fragments. What are soul fragments? In the beginning, it was actually kind of difficult to realize when you were getting them out. Or I think that what it would do is the attack would actually hit the target and take out souls from them and then absorb it. So it would basically be like a heal. Similar to a Death Strike in that it's an attack that heals you, not similar in the fact that it was entirely independent of damage that you were taking or anything like that. So it had nothing to do with that. But essentially that was the main thing. You have some fire damage, you cleave souls off the target, and you get healed up. And that was it. And you had Demon Spikes, which was increasing your parry and reducing physical damage taken. And you had some just very basic level of magic reduction. So what they've changed into is a very big focus on parry and a very big focus on these soul fragments. That is the core mechanics of the Vengeance Demon Hunter. It is about managing your soul fragments, using your cooldowns to keep yourself alive, but those soul fragments being almost like a secondary resource to your primary resource, which is pain, which stacks up to 100. It is very similar to rage, but not rage. So now that I got that whole introductory thing, kind of explained that really quickly, I want to talk about their abilities. So first of all, I want to mention alpha is alpha. A lot of these tooltips are broken. They're kind of inconsistent. They're not giving all the information. I'll gonna do my best to remember the things that I remember that are wrong. But as we go through each ability, I might mention things. So first of all, for some reason, they have their artifact ability in here. I won't go over the artifact just yet. I want to go very basic. Spells, talents, artifact. So we're going to ignore that for now. But their mastery, which is important to know, is Fellblood. This makes Demon Spikes reduce physical damage taken by an additional about 20%, and as all tank masteries do, they increase your attack power. So that is what your mastery does. As far as your other stats, crit does crit. It increases your parry chance. It seems like crit's going to be a pretty decent stat for Demon Hunters. Haste actually might be the weakest stat in that it really, as far as changing your play style, all it really does is reduce the cooldowns of some key abilities, but not by a lot, and that's kind of really all it does. Crit gives you parry, gives you more damage, it gives you some spell interactions and talent interactions. Mastery, of course, it's increasing the physical damage reduction of your main active mitigation, which is Demon Spikes. Versatility is very interesting because a lot of your spells do damage and healing, and versatility might actually sort of double dip in that and give you little bonuses on each thing. Something that you're going to notice here is that there's the theme that can be spec'd into, can be amplified, of fire damage healing you. And not huge heals, but periodic heals. It's very similar to the saying, death by 1,000 cuts. This is life by 1,000 little, needle instructions of fire healing, which is really weird to say, but I said it, so whatever. Leech as well is going to be very interesting because, again, damage that you're doing is going to be healing you, and that's basically what Leech does. So, with that out of the way, core spells. Consume Magic. Consume Magic has a 20-yard range. It's your interrupt. It has 20-second cooldown, so it's a little bit longer than normal melee. But successfully interrupting an enemy will give you 50 pain. They are the only tank class that I'm aware of, at least, unless something changes within this video. Remember, this is being done on the 12th of April. They're the only tank class that will get that sort of bonus from interrupting. It's very similar to warriors with the root interruption. I don't actually think prot warriors can access that glyph. I might be mistaken, but as far as I'm aware, they cannot. And it's going to give you 50 pain. This can be damage. This can be mitigation. This can be healing. This is very, very powerful. And as such, if you are a Vengeance Demon Hunter, and remember, all my guides are, with mythic tanking, with tanking in general in mind, you're going to want to be on interrupt rotations. You're going to want to be that person that's volunteering to go first. You want that 50 pain. It's going to be amazing. It does have an increased cooldown, again, more than normal melee, but that's because you are getting a benefit from it. So that's fantastic. Glide, as you know, double jump, and then you can glide. That's always cool. Demon Hunters get access to that. You can double jump backwards. You cannot glide backwards. You can kind of, if you do that, you can turn around and glide, but that's that. And Demon Spikes is your priority active mitigation. This is your main one. It costs 10 pain. It has I think it's 15 seconds, and then haste reduces it, so it's a recharge. It has 2 charges, and it's going to increase your parry chance by 20% and reduce physical damage you take by the 10% plus it's like 10% plus the 20 from the mastery that you have. It's going to be increasing it by mastery, but it basically reduces your physical damage and increases your parry chance. Very powerful. When it comes to physical damage taken, you're actually going to notice that there's a lot of physical damage reduction that you can kind of get away with. And it's going to seem like the major thing that might be trickling you down is going to be magic damage. But there are also a couple of counters for that. Then you have Emulation Aura. It's a standard AoE. It does fire damage to things around you, and it lasts about 6 seconds. The cool thing is it does generate 20 pain over 6 seconds. Essentially, you want to keep this on cooldown. So you're going to be always radiating some fire damage, which again will be healing you, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a little bit. But you want to basically use this on cooldown. This is also reduced by haste. Then you have Empower Wards. This is not an active mitigation, but it might as well be. What this does is 30-second cooldown reduces your magical damage taken by 30% for 6 seconds. Standard, pretty simple. It's a little bit boring, but it is what it is. It's going to help you. It's a magic damage reduction talent. That's what it is. And when they first came out, Demon Hunters just passively reduce Demon Hunters passively reduce magic damage taken by 30%. That's actually changed. You have a passive that will reduce the damage that you take by magic by 10% and increase your stamina by 20, your armor by 200. It's a standard tank buff. Baseline, you reduce the magical damage by 10%. You use this and it's an extra 30%. Then you have Infernal Strike. This is 30-yard range, is basically Heroic Leap, 2 charges, 20 seconds recharge. It actually has a very good distance. You can talent into even more distance. Does a pretty shit amount of damage. It is fire damage, but it's a nice way to close gaps. It's a movement. It's great. One thing about Demon Hunters that I absolutely love is all their mobility. And it's not just because mobility is fun to use, but it's important when tanking. And I'm just going to say this right now. I remember that warriors have been said that, you know, the kings of mobility and all this kind of stuff. Warrior mobility, I've always felt, is kind of a lie. They have mobility when there's targets around them. They have Heroic Leap that they can use, sure, and in the past it actually had a longer cooldown than it does now in Legion, but this is real mobility. Okay, Demon Hunters have so many different ways to teleport to areas, to charge people, to just go somewhere else that they want to go to, independent of targets. This is the true king of mobility. Whether that's a problem compared to all the other takes, personally, I think it might be. I think there's going to be situations where a Demon Hunter does it in a snap and a DK is crying in a corner. That's going to be an issue, but I mean, it's class fantasy or whatever. I love it because I'm thinking about playing a Demon Hunter, but if you're a warrior, if you're a paladin, if you're a DK, and you have no interest in playing something else other than DK, you might suffer. A lot of the fights have been coming out. Raid testing has been being done. Not everything needs the crazy mobility that you can do, but things do get easier. It just has to be said. Infernal Strike, it's not as cool as Fell Rush, admittedly, but it gives you some nice freedom to jump around and do things. And I'll go ahead and show what that looks like. Or actually, let me just go ahead and start showing stuff now. Emulation Aura, just want to show that off. Nice little fire effect. Stays on you, it's pretty cool. And Power Wards has a really cool animation, but it doesn't last very long. And then Infernal Strike makes you look like your Metamorphosis form for a couple seconds as you jump in the air and then you crash down. Very cool. Then we're going to go ahead and look at Metamorphosis. Now what Metamorphosis does is your big tank cooldown. It's 3 minutes. It transforms you into demon form for 20 seconds and increases your current and maximum health by 30% and generates 10 pain every 1 second. It's very, very powerful because you get a lot of health, you're generating pain, gives you a lot of resources, but beyond that, it doesn't really change your playstyle much besides the fact that you get to spam your pain users. It's okay. I'm not going to say it's not. It's decent. It's okay. And it looks super cool. If you actually see here, Vengeance tanks get some cool spikes on the back. It's very tanky. It looks very mean. And Demon Spikes actually gives you those spikes on your normal model. I'm actually going to go ahead and show it now that we're full on pain as soon as we get out of this form. But I mean, you still double jump. You can still use all your abilities. You know, it's all pretty much the same. But it does look very, very cool. And then just to show you Demon Spikes, boom. Demon Spikes. It's very cool. There's a lot of flash when it comes to this class. Fiery Brand, still pretty much the same thing. 30-yard range, 1 minute cooldown. It's going to do fire damage and then reduce the damage that target does to you by 40% for 10 seconds. This is another cooldown that you can use as a defensive. It does have some fire, so it's going to be healing you. You can talent it to do some more stuff, but essentially 40% less damage done by the target to you. Important to keep in mind. This is another cooldown that you have, a tank cooldown. Then you have Shear, which is one of my issues with the spec. You basically spam this constantly. It does some damage, it can shatter lesser soul fragments from the target, and it generates 10 page. You spam this so much. This is very similar to Tiger Palm from Monks, except Tiger Palm is a filler that you use when you have nothing else to do. This is something you just have to spam constantly. And I'll be honest, I hate it. I hate this spell with a goddamn passion. But it's useful. I mean, it gets lesser soul fragments. It gives you your main resource. You have to. But it's just a pain in the ass to use it constantly. I don't like it, but again, that might just be a playstyle thing. Then you have no, actually that's a talent, sorry. Sigil of Chains. This is basically Mass Grip. 2 minute cooldown. It puts a Sigil of Chains on the floor. After 2 seconds, it activates, and everyone within that reticle right there, this is a different spell, but same range, everything within that reticle gets pulled to the middle, then it gets a snare applied to it. This is freaking awesome. We've been wanting other classes to have mass grip. Except for the fact that now only Blood DKs and only Vengeance Demon Hunters have this ability. They're the only ones that have mass grip. That's kind of an issue. And Vengeance Demon Hunters can reduce the cooldown on their sigils if you talent it. Is that going to be a problem? Is that going to make them required? Maybe. I mean, think about Hellfire Citadel right now. How powerful is Mass Grip? How incredibly important is it to certain fights? And say what you will, they're always going to make fights that are going to be easier by abilities like this. Does that make them required? Possibly. It's something to keep in mind when you're choosing your tanks for your raid team. It's something to keep in mind when you're choosing your third tank, your off tank, all that kind of stuff. Blood DK and Vengeance Demon Hunters are the only ones in Mass Grip. Will that be a problem? Maybe. But is it cool as having it if you're going to main a Demon Hunter? Yeah, it's super freaking cool. Then you have Sigil of Flame. This is a bit of a rotational ability. This does fire damage and then applies a dot to everything. You use it all the time. It has a very short cooldown. It's just another way of doing some AoE damage. And then you have Sigil of Silence, which is just a mass silence. I will say, as a Blood Elf, already having Arcane Torrent, then you have the ability to gain pain on your interrupt, and then you have Sigil of Silence. You're an interrupting monster. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Then you have Soul Cleave. This is your primary way of kind of healing yourself. This is the really where your pain goes to. You viciously strike your target. You heal yourself. Let me actually make sure. Okay. So no, baseline you do not heal yourself. I can actually switch that and you can see it there. Or I guess you do heal yourself for some. And that just increases the heal. But essentially you do an AoE strike in front of you that heals you for some. And more importantly, consumes all the soul fragments within 20 yards. You can have 5 soul fragments that spawn within an area. And I'm going to go ahead and show that. But essentially, it pulls them to you and it consumes them. This is going to be one of your most used spells. You're almost going to be using all of your pain on it when you're not needing your pain for demon spikes. It's a very important spell to know about. Spectral Sight, it's kind of changed since its original inception. As a tank, you really won't worry about it. It just lets you see invisible stuff and... yeah, I mean, as a tank, you don't need it. Throw Glaive, it's pretty much heroic throw. It just throws a glaive, does some damage. As a tank, not like Havoc. Havoc has it on a cooldown. It's actually pretty important to the rotation. It can do damage for them. As a tank, you really just want to use this to pull. That's all you do. You use it to pull. Torment is your taunt, pretty standard. And, of course, I already talked about Demonic Wards. You already know about Double Jump. And then Shattered Souls. It is those soul fragments that come out. Every time you kill a target, you shatter the soul. You leave a soul fragment that heals you for a metric shit ton. And then lesser soul fragments is basically 1/5 of what a normal soul fragment is. So the metric shit ton healing will be applied if you absorb 5. And if you kill a demon for whatever reason, I'm sure there's going to be demons in a lot of these raid fights. If you get the killing blow or whatever, there will be a demon soul that also gives you increased 22% damage. That will be important to know. If there's adds in a fight that are demons, if there's things that can be out there and killed, if you handle that situation by yourself, you will get 20% increased damage. That is so important to know about because it's a little mechanic that can help your team do things. The more damage that you can do without sacrificing your survivability, the better. These are the types of things you have to think about as you're doing mythic content because that little bit of extra damage can mean a whole lot during progression. So, now we're going to take a look at the talents. Personally, I feel there's a lot of very interesting choices here in the talent tree. There's a lot of really cool things that you can do, and it's important to know about these things. There is something that tanks really like, especially as it's been in MoP and Legion, wherein you get to a certain point where you can trade in a little bit of your survivability for a little extra damage. And again, every single bit of damage that you can pull out of your character without sacrificing your survivability, without making you die during the fight, is important to have as a tank. I'm one of those people that believes in that. I don't believe that always going the full shield, full defensive is the best. You don't always need to turtle up. I actually cost your raid team some progress because you're not willing to lose a little bit of turtleness for a little more damage and get through phases quicker, kill things faster. So, first tree is Abyssal Strike, increases the range of Infernal Strike, which is your little, jump up, slam to the ground, and it reduces the cooldown by a little bit. Pretty standard, gives you a little more mobility. It's nothing too special. Blade Turning, parrying, and attack generates 5 pain. You're going to parry a lot, you're a parry tank, but it's unreliable pain generation. Will it be the standard in AoE tanking? Probably. You're going to get a whole bunch of pain from AoE tanking. But the one on this tier that I really like is Fracture. Fracture is going to cost you 40 pain, and it does a bunch of damage, and it shatters 2 lesser soul fragments from them. Why do I think this is important? You don't always need to use Soul Cleave to heal yourself. And more importantly, you don't always have soul fragments around to use Soul Cleave on. Sheer has a chance to give you fragments. This gives you 2. You can easily grab a bunch of soul fragments out, save them for a big moment. Oh shit, you just got knocked down to 50% health. Soul Cleave, heal up to full, you're good to go. Fracture gives you an avenue for using your pain that isn't entirely just, useless, not healing yourself, just doing AoE damage for no reason when there's one target in front of you. It's important to know about that. It's important to have a way to use your pain to get more soul fragments to then, when you need them, pull them in. And I think it's a fantastic talent. It's probably the winner in this tier, but maybe the numbers will make Blade Turning work out. I'm not really sure why this is here. This doesn't fit in with the rest of the talent tier, but it is what it is. Fracture's great. Next tier is Agonizing Flames. Emulation Aura increases your move speed by 30% and deals 100% increased damage. Again, there is an artifact trait that gives you healing on fire damage. So this will give you a little bit of healing. More importantly, it gives you a move speed buff. As if you needed any more move speed buffs. Look at this. 30% increased move speed. It's nice. It's definitely nice. And then you have Quicken Sigils. All sigils activate 1 second faster, and their range is increased by 10 yards. I can see that being useful in certain situations, but I don't ever see it being necessary. Then you have Fell Eruption. Fell Eruption is a little bit weird. It costs 20 pain. It has 25-second cooldown. The damage it does is not worth having it. Even with it doing 100% increased damage against targets permanently immune to stuns, it would have to take some math to figure out if that is going to be doing more damage than Emulation Aura. If you're at a point where everything's on farm, you just cared about damage, I'm not sure which of these two would be more important or which one would do more damage, because this is AoE, this is single target. Maybe this will win out. But the important thing is that it stuns. If you want a stun as a tank, if you want to be able to have that extra level of control, even if it's only 2 seconds, you have like 3 interrupts, you might as well get a stun as well. It's a nice way of controlling things. I can see a reason to have Fell Eruption. In a raid, who knows? Sometimes ads are stunnable. But it's definitely between Fell Eruption and Agonizing Flames. I don't see a point to having Quicken Sigils, in my personal opinion. The next tier is probably one of the best in this entire talent tree, if you want to call it that. 102 gives you access to Fellblade, which is a 15-yard range. It has a cooldown that is about 15 seconds reduced by haste, and it charges and does some damage and gives you 20 pain. And Sheer has a chance to reset the cooldown of Fellblade. I feel like this is going to be what you usually are going to use for the most part, especially leveling and such, because it gives you another way of generating pain, a bunch more pain than Sheer does, especially because Sheer has a chance of resetting the cooldown of Fellblade, and it lets you charge things. Even more mobility. I'm just going to throw it out there. Everything is about mobility with Demon Hunters, and it might be too much. I know it's the theme, but you're starting to make it to the point where there's going to be situations where they can just handle everything, and other tanks are just sitting there like, oh, well, my move speed is on a 45-second cooldown still. It's kind of a problem, but it's super fun to play. Fellblade, I think it's going to be a really good thing to be using, but the problem is it competes with Soul Barrier. Soul Barrier makes it so that when you consume a soul fragment and you're full on health, it gives you a shield. That's incredibly, incredibly powerful. I can't even explain to you how many times there's going to be time that you're going to be absorbing soul fragments when you're full health. You don't need it, and you waste it. You might even accidentally pick it up because it just happened to spawn next to you. You're a tank. Let's get that out of the way. You're a tank. You need to protect yourself. And turning all that extra healing into a shield, that's crazy. That's super powerful. I think Soul Barrier is going to be the default tanking one, and when you feel really, really confident in your tanking, you're going to want to go ahead and switch to Fellblade. When you don't need as much healing, you don't need as much protection. But I think Soul Barrier might be the go-to talent between that and Fellblade. But then you have Last Resort. Last Resort is like Purgatory. Sustaining fatal damage instead transforms you into Metamorphosis form. It returns you to 30% health, and it can occur every 3 minutes. It doesn't matter if meta's on cooldown. If you die, very similar to Purgatory, you just turn into Metamorphosis. And Metamorphosis is a 20-second buff. So my understanding of it, I'm not able to test this yet because there's nothing in here that's going to attack me, but you're going to be into Metaform for 20 seconds, getting all the benefits of Metamorphosis. It doesn't matter if meta's on cooldown, and you save yourself. Purgatory, it has to be said, is really strong, but also because the other choices in that talent tier are not very good for DKs, or at least I'm talking about WAD. In WAD, the other choices were kind of whatever, so yeah, you'd always go Purgatory because it can save you, and that's the thing. DKs go up and down. Whether this is going to be something that you want to go for on your tank, your Demon Hunter, your Vengeance tank, I'm not sure. It's going to depend on the encounter. There might be a situation where you let a mechanic kill you because it's easy for you to take care of it because you go into meta form and you live. There's some cheesing that can be involved there. It's very similar to Black Holes on Zul'Harak. Will this be used over the other two? Depends on the encounter. I feel that the go-to will be Soul Barrier, the cheesing will be Last Resort, and when you want some damage or you just need more resource generation because it's not as important to get the shielding, even though it's going to be really difficult to find a situation when you don't need the shielding, Fellblade's going to be cool. I think this is going to be... Fellblade's more fun to play with, Soul Barrier's more reasonable, Last Resort is for cheesing. It's a fantastic tier. 104 gives you access to Spirit Bomb. I don't think the name should stay the same, but I like the idea behind this talent. It makes a soul fragment launch at your target, does a bunch of damage in AoE damage, and it makes them frail, increasing the chance to shatter lesser soul fragments from them. The reason I like this talent, this is not a tanking talent. Let's be absolutely clear. Even though it's giving you more lesser soul fragments, which could be, you're gonna get healing and stuff. The reason I really like this, especially because Fracture guarantees you 2, so it kind of weakens that, is because it's that concept of turning resources into offensive measures when you don't need the defensiveness. If you need to kill something and you're not taking that much damage, or you have a giant Clarity of Will shield on you from your priest on you, you can turn your resources into damage. You don't have to save them for healing. There is an ability to turn to... You get to choose. That's what's amazing about it. That's what I like. That's the things that I want to see in more tanks. You choose. I need to heal right now. Boom, you heal yourself. I need to kill this thing right now. Boom, you kill it. And it doesn't use all your soul fragments. It uses one. You can spam it. You can just keep it up so that the frail debuff stays on them. You can even maintain this throughout an entire fight just so you're guaranteeing more soul fragments the entire time and still doing damage. It's a fantastic talent. I like it. I think it's great. I don't think it's the go-to immediately, but I think it's a very strong contender for being the best talent in this tier. So, next we have is Etched in Blood. Every 20 pain you spend reduces the cooldown of your sigils by 1 second. Standard, basic, it's going to reduce the cooldown on things that are important, such as chains. It's okay. It's not the best, but it's okay. Especially Sigil of Flame is something you're just going to be using pretty much on cooldown. Especially with the fire dot, and it's going to be doing more healing and all that kind of stuff. So it really increases the amount of times that you can use your sigils. But Spirit Bomb is pretty freaking good. And then Soul Rending just makes your Metamorphosis that much better. It increases your leech by 50%, or you gain 50% leech when it's active. If you're in a really tough situation, you need to heal yourself now, and you use it. I mean, you never want to use defensive reactionary. You want to use them preemptively to defend yourself instead of trying to save yourself at the very end. But if you do use this to save yourself, especially when you have Last Resort, you're going to be doing a bunch of self-healing. It's going to be pretty fantastic. But again, it's hard to argue a Spirit Bomb because it is increasing your lesser soul fragments. So you're going to be getting a bunch more of them. You can even use this defensively in the sense that you use it just to keep the buff up, just so you have more lesser soul fragments, just so you can heal yourself more. So honestly, I find myself very much drawn to Spirit Bomb, not just from an offensive perspective, but also a defensive one. The next tier is Burning Alive. Every 2 seconds, your fiery brand deals a bunch of damage and spreads from the primary target to the nearby enemy. This is for AoE, but it also spreads to 40% damage reduction. Very powerful for tanking multiple targets, and the thing is, it does have a 1 minute cooldown, so it's not like you can keep it up all the time. But it's really cool. And it's going to be stacking with that fire doing healing to you. So more fire, more healing. I like this talent for AoE. And the competition is something like Concentrated Sigils, which all sigils are targeted at your location. And the duration is increased by 2 seconds. One of the powerful things about sigils is you can cast them anywhere. You can choose where they go. I don't see this... I mean, I can see this being good for when you don't need to cast it anywhere else, when you want to be lazy. But compared to things such as Feast of Souls, which Soul Cleave heals you for an additional amount of healing over 6 seconds. So it's going to be healing you. It's going to be healing you from the soul fragments, and it's going to be healing you as a hot. I find that more useful than this, and I find this more useful than this. So Burning Alive for AoE, Feast of Souls for everything else, Concentrated Sigils if you're being lazy. Um, Other than that, I have no idea why you'd really want to use that. And then you have Brand of the Hunt. This is interesting, and I get what they're going for. I just don't know if this is really necessary. It's going to increase the damage you do to a target that you brand. It's going to increase it by 10%, and you can always reactivate it to teleport back. It's actually, I think it's about 20 or 30-second cooldown on the target when you use Brand of the Hunt, but you basically cast this and you teleport back to the target. My problem with this is it has no defensive measures, which, I mean, it's not like every talent needs to be tanky, but you already can charge places. You can already, you know, you can leap, you can charge, you have your just move speed if you want to with agonizing flames. Do you really need to teleport to something? I don't know. I mean, it's useful, but is it super fun? Is it super cool? It's cool, but is it fun? Is it necessary? I don't know. These are all arguments that can be made. I don't see the point of using this unless you're just cheesing it or you're just trying to kill something faster. It, it's okay. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Sigil of Misery is just miserable. Pardon the pun. It's a 1 minute cooldown. It's another sigil. It activates after 2 seconds like all sigils, but it causes enemies to be disoriented for 30 seconds. Except disorients break on damage. So I guess if you want to CC a group of enemies for 30 seconds and no one's going to hit them, sure. It's probably going to be really good in like challenge modes and things like that, or the new Mythic Plus dungeons. I don't see this being used for raiding. For real raiding, unless you just have to keep a set group of things controlled for an extended period of time, I don't see the point in this. But then you have Razor Spikes. I like Razor Spikes. When Demon Spikes is active, your physical damage does increase by 20%, and your melee attack snare targets by 50% for 6 seconds. It just gives you that offensive benefit at no defensive cost, and it's going to be on something that you're going to want to have up a lot of the time anyways. Whether this is going to map out to be more damage than this, which increases all your damage by 10% versus just physical damage by 20%, a lot of your damage just come from fire, especially if you talent into it. Who knows? I feel like Brand of the Hunt's going to be pretty easy to use because you just put it on the boss every 2 minutes and you just do more damage. Versus this, which gives you more physical damage, it lets you snare. The problem with this is a lot of your damage is coming from fire, it's coming from fel, it's coming from just random spirit explosions and shadow. So maybe this won't be the best, but Brand of the Hunt's just weird. I don't know how I feel about it. And then you have the last tier, which is Fel Devastation, 30 Pain. It's a channeled ability. It's basically I-Beam, but not I-Beam. It has a 1 minute cooldown, so you're going to want to use this on cooldown. But more importantly, it does fire damage to everything in front of you, or fel damage for a bunch, and causing damage to anyone also heals you for up to a certain amount of health. This does not stack, or as far as I'm aware, it should not do more damage if you hit more. It shouldn't do more healing if you hit more people. I don't think. Remember, tooltips are broken. I don't know if this means that, but it sounds like it's just going to do healing for hitting any target. That's pretty cool. Again, it's giving you that offensive defensive trade-off that I like to talk about and I like having. It's going to be healing you when you do damage. It does heal for a decent amount, and it's on a 1 minute cooldown. It's another way of kind of topping yourself up. So it's pretty cool, and it does a lot of damage. It's very good for AoE. Then you have Netherbond. Netherbond is very similar to the current tank ring in Warlords of Draenor. It's a 2 minute cooldown. You bind yourself to a friendly target, and every 1 second your health is redistributed between the both of you, and so that each of you has the same percentage of maximum health, I should say. It's going to be really strong with things like bears who have just metric shit ton of health, but it's very powerful. It's a tank cooldown. It's like a vigilance, but redistributing your health. It's like Spirit Link Totem. It's pretty cool. I like this. I like having tank cooldowns. I like having a way of saving my tank buddy, or crazier, putting it on someone who's going to soak a mechanic that would otherwise kill them. But they won't die because, I just pop. Okay, I'm not tanking the boss. I pop meta. I put Netherbond. You just survive through that mechanic. Sweet. We don't have to deal with it. It's going to be very powerful. I see this being chosen a lot. There's going to be, dependent on the situation at hand, depending on if you need more tank cooldowns, it's going to be dependent, but I see both of these being useful already. And then you have Feed the Demon. Consuming a soul fragment, which you do all the time, reduces the remaining cooldown of demon spikes by 2 seconds. You can keep up demon spikes for a very long time with this. You do generate a lot of soul fragments. If you get into a nice rhythm and keep your pain rotation, keep your pain management up, you're absorbing a lot of cool soul fragments. You have a nice, you have nice RNG with your shear. You're causing them a lot. Hell, Spirit Bomb is letting you cause more of them. You can keep demon spikes up a lot. So I also see this being useful. As far as defensive, this is probably the best defensive, self-defensive type thing. This is probably the best for your co-tank or cheesing mechanics. And this is going to be very good just for doing a bunch of damage and still having some sort of healing. So I really like this tier as well. Overall, I like their talents. The only one that I'm just like, why does this even exist? Abyssal Strike, it's cool. I don't think it has a place in this talent tree. Fell Eruption, it's going to depend on whether the damage it does single target against a boss that can't be stunned is worth it. Quicken Sigils, I mean, sure, more range, it goes faster. There's a reason to have it, I guess. Concentrated Sigils, if you want to be lazy. I don't, any of the duration effects, I mean, Chain Snares, Flame does more damage, so it'll be a little longer. Dot, Silence is just, okay, so there's silence for 4 seconds. I don't know about Concentrated Sigils. Brand of the Hunt is just, it's just free damage, sure, and you can teleport to the enemy, which is cool, I guess, but I wish there was more to it. I wish there was more interactions between it, but that's fine. And then, of course, we have our artifact talent, or artifact tree. So, a lot of the stuff in the middle is very basic, very simple. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible. You have Soul Cleave heals for an additional 3% of your maximum health when used. So I guess I was wrong. Soul Cleave does not, or it might heal you, it might not. I have no idea if you use a baseline or not. I think it's been changing. I know the tooltips, like I said, is not working currently, but Soul Cleave is just going to heal you when you for your maximum health when you use it. Like it already does heal you for a bunch of stuff. Aura of Pain increases the damage of Emulation Aura by 15%. Siphon Power. Empower Wards now also increases your agility by 20% based on magic damage taken. This is weird. I hope this gets taken out. It doesn't sound like this is going to be... If you try to cheese it, you might almost die. And if you don't cheese it, why have it? So I'm kind of iffy about that, but it does seem like that's going to be changing. The ones that are dark are ones that are not working currently, so I think they're going to change that one. But then Infernal Force increases the damage of Infernal Strike. It's still shit. Honed Warblades increases damage of Shear by 50%. You're going to be spamming this until you want to cut off your hand, so I mean, why not? Tormented Soul increases damage of Soul Cleave by 50%. Sure. Eldrachi Design. Parry chance increased by 3%. You're a parry tank. Defensive Spikes. The first 3 seconds of Demon Spikes, your parry chance is increased by 30%. You're a parry tank. Shatter the Souls. Shear has a 50% increased chance to shatter a lesser soul fragment from the target while you're below 50% health. Basically, it's a nice way of, if you're low on health, you can try to get some more fragments, but the amount of percentage chance that Shear is going to spawn a fragment isn't even like really super known right now, so it's, it's kind of iffy. But I mean, sure, why not? Fiery Demise, Fiery Brand also increases fire damage to the target by 30%. This is important. Keep this in mind. Demonic Flames increases the duration of Fiery Brand by 2 seconds. Sure. Embrace the Pain increases the maximum health gain from Metamorphosis by 15%. Sure. Will the Illidari, maximum health increased by 15%. Sure. And then the big ones. Fueled by Pain. You have a chance to enter Metamorphosis form for 5 seconds each time you consume a soul fragment. You get the 30% increased health and 30% increased max health, and you get the pain generation. You consume soul fragments all the time. All the time. And having a chance to go into meta, increasing your research generation, it's not something you can rely on, which is something to keep in mind. You can't rely on this to save you. But it's really nice to have some good RNG procs. You'll just be getting a bunch of resource generation, more fractures, more soul cleaves. Fantastic. I love this. If you have shit RNG, I'm sorry, you're probably never going to turn into metaform. And being in metaform is really cool. But this is cool. It's boring. It's boring in the sense that it's not another button, but it's not boring because it changes your priorities, your rotation. It changes what you're doing when it procs, which is cool to have. Painbringer. Each soul fragment consumed grants you 3% damage reduction for 4 seconds. This is boring because this has no effect on your playstyle. It has no effect on what you're doing. It just happens. It's passive reduction. This could almost be an inner talent and not matter. It's just sad. Then you have Shard Wardblades. This does not work currently. for the most part on the alpha, but you heal for 15% of all fire damage though. Personally, this is as boring as this talent. This just happens. It's not something you really control as much, except the fact that you have a lot of abilities that deal fire damage that you can choose when to use. But essentially, this makes Fiery Brand. It makes, let's see, deal fire damage. Fellblade. It makes Sigil of Flames, Immolation Aura, just a bunch of things do healing to you for 15%. That's not a lot. And Fiery Brand increasing the fire damage you do. So when you use Fiery Brand, you can spam all your fire abilities. You can do a bunch of healing. It's going to be healing you for a bunch of different little things, which is cool. But it's very passive stuff. It's just kind of keeping you up. It's not. I think this is really cool. I think these two are kind of boring. And then you have your artifact power to say your ability that comes straight from having the artifact, which I like. It carves you carve the soul of your target. You shatter 2 lesser soul fragments off them. You deal a bunch of fire damage. You cause them to burn for a fire damage dot, and then they lose lesser soul fragments every 1 second for 3 seconds. This gives you 5 soul fragments on demand. This is amazing because it's another defensive cooldown. It's another way of getting yourself those soul fragments that you need for anything. If you want to do some spirit bombs, if you want to heal yourself, if you want to, whatever it is that you want to do, you need some shielding. It's great. It's great. I love that ability. So overall, you have a number of defensive abilities, defensive talents, things that'll keep you up, different ways of staying alive. You have Demonic Spikes as an active negation and Power Wards as magical reduction. You have Fiery Brand, 40% damage reduction on a single target. Metamorphosis, which is another damage reduction. You have, let's see, passive damage reduction from magic damage. And you just have all these different things that interact with each other that can keep you alive. You have trade-offs for damage versus survivability. It's really, really cool. I like the soul fragment mechanics. I like having to manage that. You can only have about 5 out. You actually can see you're gonna want to do things to track it if you're not gonna use the little bar, the new little bar, the UI one that comes down here. It's a lot of really interesting ways of managing your fragments, managing the damage that you're taking versus the damage that you deal out, and it gives you choices. That's what we want as tanks. Oh, I'm taking like no damage right now, but there's this priority ad that needs to die now. Blow your shit on it. Spirit bomb that bitch. You have all these amazing options, and it's why I'm so interested in this class. It has variety. It has things that you could do, and I think it's personally fantastic. What I will say though is when you don't have all of the artifact available to you, when you don't have, every single talent, because so you don't have all your talents until level 110. Every other class will have all their talents at 100, but you're leveling, so they didn't want to give you all the talents right away. They wanted to give it to you at like every 2 levels. I get it. I hate it, but I get it. But when you don't have everything available to you, you do feel weak. I did a couple of dungeons. As far as you could in the alpha, sometimes people leave, sometimes things bug out. I did a couple of dungeons on my level 102 Vengeance Demon Hunter that I leveled. I'm trying not to spoil the content for myself, so play it too much, level too far. But I did a couple of dungeons, and I gotta be honest, it's hard. It's not super fun. Not having access to these other abilities kind of sucks, and it does make you a little bit squishy. It does make it a little bit difficult to tank things. Maybe things are not tuned properly yet, which, could happen, but until you hit level 110, and until you start getting a lot of these artifacts, until you start getting a lot of these artifact traits, very specifically, I think this is going to be the first one you want to go for. This is going to be some nice passive damage reduction, but this is just going to give you those nice little moments to keep you topped off and keep you helping yourself out with your pain generation and some defensive measures there. Especially if you have the leech on your metamorphosis. If you take soul rending, you're going to be randomly having 50% leech, which is going to be nice, even though it's probably going to go to waste a little bit. Until you have all those things available to you and it's all interconnecting and synergizing together, it does kind of suck leveling in the dungeons. But I can see the way this is meant to be played. It's very similar to the Brewmaster in that it has a bunch of interconnecting spinning plates, but if you manage them together, you have a tank that has so many toys and tools available to him. He can teleport to different areas. He can And by different areas, I mean he can teleport from mob to mob. He can jump around a bunch. He has a move speed that he can use on demand. He has a bunch of AoE damage. He has cooldowns that he can use to cheese mechanics, cooldowns that let other people cheese the mechanics. He has mass grip. This is a powerful tank. As long as the tuning gets done, that they're not taking too much damage without anything up, because that's a problem that monks have actually, where their damage reduction is actually as much as a rogue. It's just that they stagger some of it. Um, if they can manage those little spinning plates, they can tune them right, and they make sure that the bosses don't like one shot you if you don't have demon spikes up. I can see this being a very powerful class. It's already a very fun class to play besides having to spam shear, and I want to actually gonna go ahead and show some of that to you. You can shear, it's just pretty good. You just spam it like crazy. You have Fellblade, which currently doesn't give you any pain when you use it on a target. But there you go. See, I consumed the soul fragment, and I turned to meta for 5 seconds. Fracturing some fragments off, spamming it, spamming fracture, which is a really cool animation, by the way. Just kind of like a headbutt. I'm going to use demon spikes, just going to defend myself for a little bit, and we're going to go ahead and soul cleave the fragments onto me, because you can see that I have 2. Soul cleave them in, I transform to meta again, jump here, put down a sigil flame, immolation aura, fiery brand, just do a bunch of fire damage, Fellblade, fracture, just take a bunch here, soul cleave it. It works. It does. You can see here, soul carver. Start spamming those things. It really does work. The one thing I will say again is the pain generation is kind of a pardon the pun. But the pain generation is a bit of a pain because you just spam shear, but it works. It's so it feels smooth. It feels nice. It's very 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 different from what the initial inception of this class was, and I'm personally a huge fan of this. Um, that being said, it's going to need a little more changes with some things. I think that some of the talents, again, Brand on the Hunt maybe, need to be changed up. It needs to be, the tuning needs to happen, of course, make sure everything is fine. But I'm personally excited about this tank. It has the toys that you need to get through mechanics, to work through mechanics in interesting and fun ways. It has things that you can do that other tanks can't do, and that is going to give you tools and just utility for your raid team. It's important to have that utility. Remember, I'm Mythic Raider. I'm thinking about things in the terms of Mythic raids. Ways to get through things as easily as possible, ways to handle mechanics by myself. In my raid team, I was the one that came up with the idea of using the tank ring to soak Mythic Banner off Wrath of Gul'dan things, because it frees up the rest of the raid to do whatever it is they got to do the damage. You just have, we 3-3 tank it, you just have one tank deal with that mechanic almost entirely by themselves. And it's those types of things that I value. I put a lot of value in, because that's how you get through encounters easily. And the more utility you provide, the better. But anyway, guys, that has been my quick little update and overview to the Vengeance Demon Hunter. I will do another one of these for the class right before, when beta's ending, maybe. If there's another huge overhaul of the class, that's important to know. If there's an overhaul in some way, shape, or fashion, I'll go ahead and cover that. But if not, this will be there'll be one more video right before the game actually launches, and then of course as I'm leveling, I'll be doing videos and stuff like that. If you like this, if you value this content, if you value this opinion, you want to see more of this, please, please, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me so much more than you could possibly imagine. It gives me more freedom for the channel. It lets me do more things, and I have so many ideas for what I want to do with this channel. I want to transition this into a very focused on tanking. Other games on the side, I do a lot of Overwatch and other videos. That's just really things that I kind of just have fun doing, just have fun making, to kind of put in between all the really big pieces like this. So if you like this, again, like it, subscribe to the channel, give me any comments for anything you think I should change, any advice you might have for me, and please go ahead and just follow me for any more information on tanks here in the Legion Alpha. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Again, my name is Tao the Tank, and I'm going to be bringing you a bunch more Legion stuff. I'm going to be doing all the tank classes, and this has been my second updated look at the Vengeance Demon Hunter. I like it. It looks good, and I have high hopes for the future.